anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus.
If you can't predict the market tomorrow or the next day, you can't predict the lottery numbers a week out, how can you predict if there's going to be a pandemic? Believe me, if we could predict stuff like that, then the world would be a much, much better place for all of humanity.
Let's talk about this vaccine solution, because it's all we're hearing now is that this is the answer. Once everyone gets vaccinated, you can fly, you can go back to work, you can go to public places, and it's the only word I hear.
The WHO is trying to decide on a strategy, a marketing campaign, I believe was a term that they used, to increase physician confidence in the vaccinations. When you have to have a marketing campaign to increase their confidence because of dwindling confidence in the vaccine industry, you know that there's something that doesn't smell right. I believe that there's thousands and thousands of doctors worldwide that feel this way. They're just not being represented because the media is definitely trying to prevent this information from getting out.
I think you bring up a great point, and that's this point of censorship. You know, when I started even mentioning the word vaccination, I got shut down more than when I started questioning the classification of COVID-19 deaths.
How many safety studies have been done by the US government to assess the efficacy and safety of vaccines? I'll save you some time. 0. It's the US government that you're suing because of a vaccine injury. We are having to fight our own government because we've been injured by something that they've mandated that's being made by a company or companies that are vested in making unbelievable, god-awful amounts of money with no liability. It's not about me, guys. I care about my kids, and I care about your kids, and I care about all the future kids, because we're talking about the future of the human race. And what they're doing is committing the greatest atrocity, the greatest crime against mankind that has ever been committed because of the stupidity of the human species. So we have to rise up right now. We have to make this change now. We have to wake up. We have to realize what's happening, because the planet's survival, literally the human species' survival, is at stake.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go? This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. Today I am hosting London Real's first ever roundtable event with over 100 medical doctors from around the world to discuss the coronavirus pandemic and global lockdown. Joining me as moderator is former guest Dr. Rashid Buttar, who is trained in general surgery and emergency medicine and served as brigade surgeon while serving in the U.S. Army. Dr. Buttar, you have taught conventional medicine, including advanced trauma life support, through the American College of Surgeons for over 20 years and have been ranked as one of the top 50 doctors in the U.S. since 2003 by Phillips Publishing. We are here today to raise awareness and build consensus regarding the current global threat we are facing under the guise of COVID-19. Dr. Buttar and our panel of medical professionals, welcome to London Real.
Thank you, Brian.
Great to have you here today. First, I want to start by announcing that we are streaming on our brand new Digital Freedom platform, which is a censorship-free, independent broadcasting system that is of the people, by the people, for the people, and available exclusively through our website at londonreal.tv. I would ask for everyone watching us now to please share this link via the sidebar to all of your social media channels. And let me just repeat that. Please share this via the sidebar through all your social media channels. It's very important. Simply ask your friends and family to give us 15 minutes. That's all we ask, and then they can decide for themselves. Dr. Buttar and the panel members, I pledge to you and everyone watching this that none of this conversation will be edited, censored, removed, or banned, and that anyone in the world can watch the full version of this episode at londonreal.tv/roundtable. Thanks to the generous donations of over 30,000 people around the world that I affectionately call the London Real Army. For anybody wanting to become a founding member of the Digital Freedom Platform, they can go to londonreal.tv/freedom to donate and fight with us on the front lines to protect our human rights. Here at London Real, we've been a platform for free speech since 2011. And Dr. Buttar and the panel members, I'm very excited to have you here today. For the format of today, I wanted to really ask some questions about what's currently going on in the world to Dr. Buttar, and then see if we can get a consensus from the panel members about some very specific issues. And so perhaps we start off, Dr. Buttar, maybe you can talk a little bit about yourself and some of the issues that you've been talking about for the past 4 weeks. And then maybe we can just start off with some of the questions surrounding the things that we've been told, whether it's the exact correct death count of COVID-19 deaths, the face masks, the social distancing. I'd love to really get this panel involved and get their thoughts. So maybe I'll just have you just kind of start off. What have you been talking about these last few weeks, and what are you seeing out there that needs to be addressed by this panel?
I think that the biggest issue that I want to make sure that the world understands is the predictive nature of what has been stated as far back as 2017, that there was going to be this pandemic. That there's no way that somebody could have predicted that unless they had some inside knowledge of a release of some type of a pathogenic, pandemic potential, chimeric derivative type pathogen. There's no way you can predict that. If you can't predict the market tomorrow or the next day, you can't predict the lottery numbers a week out. How can you predict if there's going to be a pandemic? And those people that say that they're models and that are predictive models, believe me, if we could predict stuff like that, then the world would be a much, much better place for all of humanity. But the answer is you can't make those type of predictions. And now they've got the second wave of COVID-19 that they're predicting. And I want to make sure that the world understands what is really getting ready to happen, because as people are allowed to come back into society, their immune systems are already going to have been suppressed because of the wearing of the mask, which is going to increase cortisol levels. It's going to put people into a pseudo-hypoxic state. They're having to suck oxygen through a mask. It drives the cortisol levels up, which then creates a sympathetomimetic drive. It suppresses the lymphocyte subpopulation, decreases the immune system, and renders an individual more susceptible to any type of pathogen, whether it be bacteria, virus, spirochete, mycoplasma, yeast, parasite, whatever. So that's the first component. When people start coming back into society, their immune systems are going to be more vulnerable. Plus the fact that they've been stressed out emotionally, financially, psychologically, staying at home, coming back out, their bodies are going to be under duress, under stress, and so they're going to be more susceptible to any pathogen. That's the first part. The second part, since we're on an uncensored platform, second part is there is new technology that's being rolled out called 5G. The implications of that technology are not fully understood, but there have been over 2,000 studies done showing how that technology suppresses the immune system. So we've got a massive issue, that potential issue, where the immune system is going to be further damaged, distraught, suppressed because of this technology. And then the third component is people are going to come running out wanting the vaccine because they're so petrified. And so there are going to be certain people that are going to get vaccines. And of course, it's not going to be mandated, but they're going to get sick when they get the vaccines. So they're going to have 3 different causes of people getting sick. That is going to be attributed to the second wave of COVID-19. And under pretense of public safety, they will then mandate that vaccines must become mandatory. And that's what I want to make sure that the world is aware of, that agenda.
No, I appreciate those thoughts, Dr. Buttar. What's the best way we can get the panel involved right now as far as, asking them a question and getting kind of a consensus? I mean, what's one of the first issues that you would just like to explore? Because the great thing about having everyone here is that everyone can kind of see what kind of a peer group thinks about some of these issues. Well, where should we start?
Well, I guess we could ask how many people agreed with the general statement that I just made of the second wave of COVID getting ready to happen, and whatever the agendas are, that's the agenda is mandated vaccines down the line. Okay, so people are already raising the hand before you even ask them to do anything, Brian.
Okay, so again, let's just be super clear. Hold your hand up if you believe that what you just said, that there is that second wave that's about to come on that's going to be really pushing people toward this vaccine agenda. Okay, and we're going to scroll over here. If just keep those hands up and we can see, I'm just doing
maybe it'd be easier to say, if you don't agree, to hold your hand up. So let's put our hands down. If you don't agree, put your hand up. That way we can easier count that number. So do we have, let's see, we have nobody on the first page.
Well, actually, let's do it the other way because I can get a rough idea. So let's just get
all right, that's fine.
Hands up if you actually believe, and maybe just to make that statement one more time again, Dr. Buttar.
So the statement was that they can't predict what's going to happen in the markets or in the lottery numbers, but they're predicting the second wave. And the reason they can predict it is because they've planned it, and the agenda will be mandated vaccines under pretense of public safety mandated vaccines.
Okay, so hands up for that. And let me just see here. We're going to scroll here in our studio, but I mean, roughly this looks kind of like an 80-90% hands up here, maybe closer to 90 plus. Wow, okay, that's pretty powerful.
Brian, we have 150 doctors on here.
Yeah, there's 150 doctors here. Everyone's put their full names here. We're scrolling through here. And again, I really appreciate everyone here for the support. If you haven't turned your camera on, if you can, it would be great to see your face. It just helps to show this. So look, that's a great start. I really appreciate that. I'd love to get down into some of the specifics, if that's okay with you, Dr. Buttar, and some of these issues that we're feeling right now. You know, one of the most simple ones we can talk about is the use of face mask. You know, we're all being told here that we have to use these masks to go back to work, to ride public transportation. It seems to be mandated in certain areas and not in others. I want to get your thoughts, and I'd love to get the panel's thoughts on whether they think face masks are going to help this situation. Maybe get your thoughts first, and then we can ask a simple question to the panel.
So the face mask agenda seems to be, if you look at it from just a safety standpoint, it's highly suspect. If you look at it from a scientific perspective, the agenda is nefarious. The use of a face mask is designed to protect not the doctor or the nurse, but the patient, so that when a surgeon is operating and doing a bypass surgery or a herniorrhaphy or a joint replacement, that if the surgeon sneezes or coughs or drools or spits or whatever, you don't want to get the surgical field contaminated. You want to maintain that sterile field. When people in the Far East, for example, wear a mask, they're wearing a mask out of courtesy for other people, so that if they're sick, they're not going to get somebody else sick. That's the reason people wear masks. Now, this mandate of wearing a mask, if you notice during the press conferences with the president's never worn a face mask. Even Dr. Fauci originally said back in March, there's no reason to wear a face mask. It doesn't make any sense. Now, of course, he's wearing a face mask. So the first thing about a face mask is that we already talked about, it's suppressing the immune system because you're driving the person into a hypoxic state. There have been multiple studies that have been done on this, where they've actually studied surgeons and seen the level of oxygenation, and especially on a chronic basis. Dr. Russell Blaylock put out a great paper that summarized many of those research points. So we know that happens. We know it suppresses the immune system because of that sympathetomimetic drive that we initiate, because we're having to suck oxygen through the face mask. On top of that, we breathe out carbon dioxide. But when you've got a mask on, you're actually creating a decrease. You're creating actually an increase in respiratory drive because you get more carbon dioxide coming back from the face mask. Now, the face mask also creates other types of issues because you've got irritating your face and sweating and all this stuff. So you're always fiddling around with your face. And then the last point about the face mask, and there's a lot of points we can make about the face mask, but the last and most that shows the most idiotic aspect of this is that it's like building a chain link fence to prevent a fly from getting into your house, or a split railed fence to keep mice out. The viral particles that we're trying to keep out of our bodies are so much smaller than the smallest pore of these masks. Now, there's also another thought process that this entire thing that's being blamed on COVID-19 is actually the real pathology that people are experiencing, are pathology that is actually from a secondary to a histotoxic hypoxic injury, which has nothing to do with the virus. It's to do with contamination from combustion of fossil fuels, from the incinerator burn-offs, from the chemtrails, from all the different components in the quality of the air. So we had that present in Wuhan because we know that the level of air there was extremely, extremely poor. As far as back as 2017, 2016, CNN and BBC covered the air quality issue in Wuhan, and it was basically garnered international attention because of the quality of the air. On top of that, Iran, Italy, and New York have all the same issues. So if this is a histotoxic, hypoxic injury, then when you're wearing a face mask, and let me just make sure for the audience, the doctors here obviously know what that means, but histo meaning cell, toxic meaning toxicity. So on the cellular level, the toxicity that's resulting in a hypoxic injury, which is decrease in oxygen. So many of the doctors that have been censored that are in the trenches have explained that this does not present like a viral injury. People are turning blue. It looks like an altitude type sickness. It looks like a hypoxic injury. Well, that's exactly what this histotoxic hypoxic injury would do. And so if that's the case, when you're wearing a face mask, there are various plastics in there. And as we continue to breathe back and forth, the humidity starts to cause that propylene, whatever the material is, I think it's propylene glycol or some type of a plastic, it starts to break down. And now you're ingesting or inhaling many of these chemicals that are organophosphates or that may have these plastic components in there. I don't even know all the different components in there, but they're inhaling that, which is going to further exacerbate a histotoxic hypoxic injury. So you've got the practical aspect that it doesn't work. It's like building a fence with mosquitoes coming in. But on top of that, it's actually creating a worse issue. It's suppressing the immune system. And if our goal is to make people healthy, the first thing we should be doing is telling them not to wear a mask, especially when it's not designed. A mask is not designed for to protect the doctor. It's designed to protect the sterile field that the doctor is operating in.
And great. So let's get the consensus here. I guess to get the best question would be to raise your hand if you believe that the wearing of a mask is unnecessary. Is that how you would phrase that?
We could start there with unnecessary, and then there's a second question that I have after that. So let's see how many people.
Okay, so let me just see. Wearing of a mask is unnecessary. Let's just see if we see hands here. Okay, so I'm going to go through here and see these hands. Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing about 80% here, 80% probably, 70%. We're just going to take a little time and scroll through here. Again, if you are joining us, if you could turn your camera on so we can just see those hands raised up. That's super helpful. I see about 70 or 80% are people saying that it's unnecessary. You said you had a follow-up question to that. What was that?
Well, my follow-up question would be how many people concur that it actually is contributing to the suppression of the immune system, that's actually making people sicker by wearing the mask? Not that it's not necessary, that it's actually making it worse.
Okay, hands up if you do. And I see Dr. Grant and Dr. Schmidt, and there's quite a few people here. All right, hold your hands. If you can just keep those up, we're just going to scroll through those. Wow, okay, so quite a lot of people saying it's worse. Notice what, like Dr. Wells, for example, he didn't raise his hand when it said it wasn't necessary, but he raised his hand when he said that it's detrimental. So some of the people that didn't raise their hand when we asked the question if it's not necessary, they were waiting for that next question. So they were anticipating that somebody's going to ask that it's worse. That's even more important, Brian. So you follow what I'm saying? Yeah, so basically, and we've got probably 80, 90% of the doctors here saying it's actually more harmful for you to wear a mask.
That's what I'm seeing.
Which is the opposite of what...
I've only seen two hands that have not gone up.
Wow. Which is the opposite of what we're being told. And just
four hands that haven't gone up.
Yeah. And that's the opposite of what the WHO is telling people right now. And if I published this on YouTube right now, this video would be banned and I would be censored because that's against public opinion, WHO mandate. And yet 90% of the doctors are saying that that's the case here.
And Brian, we have undercover footage off the World Health Organization in their private forum talking about how the confidence level of not just the public in vaccines, but among the physician community worldwide is decreasing. And they're talking among themselves. This is stuff that Del Bigtree has footage of. I've seen it. We're going to actually show that at the Advanced Medicine Conference coming up this weekend, where the WHO is trying to decide on a strategy, a marketing campaign, I believe was a term that they used, to increase physician confidence in the vaccinations. So now when you have to have a marketing strategy to convince the health professionals, those who have been appointed to safeguard our health and our children's health, when you have to have a marketing campaign to increase their confidence because of dwindling confidence in a concept of medicine, in a portion of medicine, i.e. the vaccine industry, you know that there's something that doesn't smell right. You shouldn't have to have a marketing campaign to convince doctors that, hey, continue doing this insanity that has caused what they call a genetic epidemic. 1 in 10,000 children with autism, now that was in 1991, and now 1 in 30, depending on which data you look at, 1 in 29, 1 in 30, 1 in 32. The Centers for Disease Control's own data shows that 1% of the population of the planet currently has autism. The current world's population is 7.7 billion. 1% of that is 77 million. According to the CDC's own data, 77 million children and young adults have autism on our planet right now. And the explanation is that autism is a genetic disorder. There is no such thing as a genetic epidemic. In 29 years to go from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 30, there's something wrong.
Okay, so let's talk about vaccinations next. We might as well just jump right into it. And there's still a lot of other things I want to cover. Let's talk about this vaccine solution, because it's all we're hearing now is that this is the answer. Once everyone gets vaccinated, you can fly, you can go back to work, you can go to public places. And it's the only word I hear. It's also the one word that if I say it, I'm going to get videos taken down from YouTube. We're going to be censored and banned. A lot of your stuff has been banned and censored. Same with Dr. Judy Mikovits. Let me get your take on the vaccines, and then maybe you can formulate a good question that we can ask this panel about vaccines.
The vaccine that's supposed to be coming down the pipeline is a retrovirus RNA type vaccine, which is going to be the first commercially available in that category. And basically, RNA rewrites our DNA. It repairs our DNA. So the vaccine that they're planning on bringing out, which if it is Moderna, which is the one that's been earmarked, which was on the brink of bankruptcy, $1.5 billion in the hole that Bill Gates salvaged. If they are the ones that get the contract, if they're the ones that actually come to fruition, which there seem to be earmarked by Dr. Fauci, it will be an retrovirus RNA type vaccine that has, 1, never been tested in animals. 2, Moderna has never made any vaccine before. 3, Moderna has never made anything consumable by humans ever before. And 4, they're going to go right into the human testing. And if this happens, certainly our children will not be able to have children, but more than likely beyond that, the second generation, I don't even know whether we'd get to the second generation, but definitely by the third generation, our genome, our genetic code, our DNA would not be what it is now. We would literally not be humans anymore. Now, the change in the genetic code is presumed to be so significant that the people that are going to be used that have volunteered to be the first humans to use this vaccine have already been told that they cannot have sexual intercourse. There's no reproduction. They don't want anybody reproducing while undergoing this experimentation with the vaccine. And the only thing that I can deduce from that is that they're concerned that if somebody were to conceive a child, that there would be some significant abnormalities or things that they would not want the world to recognize and realize. So whether or not a person believes or agrees with the vaccination issue or not, this vaccine is hugely problematic because most vaccines take 5 to 6 years to make. They always add adjuvants. They always add things to create stimulants, DNA adducts. They always put preservatives in there like mercury and formaldehyde and nickel. These are highly toxic substances. We don't even know what components of those things will be included in this COVID-19 virus, but we know that based upon the historical precedence of the success of vaccines, which is 0, that's a misnomer. There is no success of previous vaccines. That's the reason that I believe the agenda is nefarious. And one further thing before we go on, Brian, because I know we're going to have to set these things up as questions. Sometimes doctors, especially those that are just getting into this or just researching it, they'll say, well, what about polio? So if you want to look at things like polio, very simply look at polio and then look at the incidence of DDT. Now, most chemical compounds that have been introduced into the global economy, it takes of the dirty dozen, the 12 most toxic substances that are banned across every nation on the planet. Those 12, before they became banned, had been used in global commerce for a minimum of 50 years, most of them for over 70 years before it was determined how dangerous they were. Now, back then, during the smallpox era, there was a chemical called DDT, and DDT is today considered one of those dirty dozen. Nobody uses it. It's considered toxic and it's considered banned from all nations. But there were ads in the United States with children saying, flies don't land on me because I've had my DDT. You remember the era when it used to say a cigarette a day keeps the doctor away. Well, this is about DDT. Flies won't land on me because I've had my DDT. Now it's a dirty dozen. So when people say, what's that got to do with polio? The incidence of polio, if you graph it, and the incidence of the use of DDT, polio was 6 months behind the incidence of DDT. So when you would see DDT levels peaking, you would see polio peak 6 months later. Then you'd see DDT usage dropping, you'd see polio 6 months later drop. Now, this is a very interesting observation. I don't know whether that means that DDT was causing it, but certainly smallpox vaccine was not the reason that smallpox was eradicated. I believe it was because we stopped using DDT. So this is a political thing, but when it comes down to the aspect of vaccinations, people say, Dr. Buttar, you're an anti-vaxxer. I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm anti-stupidity. Because if there was a vaccine that didn't have all those preservatives in there that are highly toxic, like mercury and formaldehyde and nickel, and didn't have the DNA adducts that are added to increase a reaction, if they didn't have various human cell lines, mutated human cell lines, DNA from other species like dogs and monkeys with other viral loads in there, if they didn't have all those things in there and they actually were given at a time when a child could seroconvert, because we give these vaccines on the first day of the planet, yet a child's immune system can't even seroconvert, can't even mount an immune response till 6 months to a year of age. So now we've got all these components, and then using things like mercury, the body can't even eliminate it till the alimentary system is fully developed, which takes about a year for the alimentary tract to develop. So we're giving poisons to children under the pretense of increasing the immune response, but we're also adding things that suppress the immune system at the same time, giving it at a period when the immune system isn't even capable of seroconverting. So to me, that's stupidity. I'm anti-stupidity. If you want to have a vaccine, which I believe right now there's no safe vaccine, but if they made a vaccine that didn't have DNA adducts, didn't have mutated human cell lines, didn't have adjuvants, didn't have mercury, nickel, formaldehyde, and other contaminants and other things that are dangerous that suppress the immune system, didn't have glyphosate, which now they have glyphosate in there. They have Roundup, the weed killer in vaccines. If they didn't have all that stuff in there, and it would actually given at a time when a child could actually seroconvert, like at a year and a half of age, and it didn't cause any harm, I would be all for it. I would be totally for it. So I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm anti-stupidity. And I have a feeling that almost every doctor on here that's done enough research would agree with me, but let's take the vote and see.
All right, so what's the question?
Lot, right, Brian? So we need to probably decide what the question is.
The question has to be, do you believe that vaccination in the next 12 months is, a bad idea? Is that what you're asking? How do you frame this to where we can actually get, a consensus?
Let's ask three questions. First of all, the current methodology that's used to develop vaccines and administer vaccines based upon the historical precedents over the last 29 years, how many people agree with that vaccination schedule and how it's administered? Let's leave COVID out of it for a second. Okay,
so just the current vaccination schedule. How many people...
Giving it on the first day of the planet and all the ingredients and all the components that I discussed. How many people agree with that? Or how many people, disagree is what we want to say, right? Because we want to count the hands.
Okay. So if you disagree with, and say that one more time, with
the hands are already up.
Yeah, okay.
How many people disagree with the current methodology used to give vaccinations since 1991, since the National Vaccine Initiative?
Okay, just keep the hands up if you're not. And I'm just looking through here. And it's not everyone, but it's probably 80, 90%, but there's some people that don't agree. That's fine. This is what we want. We want to find out what the numbers are here. And just keep those hands up as we scroll through. Just want to make sure we get all that.
It's way more than that. I've only counted two hands. I'm on the third page. I've only counted two hands that are not up.
Yeah. Okay, so we're probably at 95%.
And then there's a lot of people who we can't see, but right. Everybody that we can see, their hands are, yeah.
Okay.
Only two people whose hands aren't up.
Okay, so that's the current regime of the vaccination. What's the next question you want to ask about the potential COVID-19 vaccination?
Based upon the fact that we have hydroxychloroquine and Zithromax, that we see no deaths have occurred, and based on the facts that it normally takes 5 years to bring a vaccine to fruition, how many people support a vaccine for COVID-19 right now that they're going to roll out, let's say in the next 3 months, 6 months, a year, within the next 2 years, how many people would let's see, we got to make.
Well, let's go with support. Let's see support, and we'll just see if any hands go up. How many
people support the use of a vaccine, COVID-19, in the next year?
In the next 12 months. Okay, and hold the hands up, and if you do believe that, feel free to hold it up. That's okay. All right.
Nobody on the first page. Nobody on the second. Oh, wait a second. There's one person on the second page.
Okay.
Oh, down. He's pointing down. He's got his thumb pointing down. Yeah, when you put your hand up there, Dr. Kashu is actually pushing his thumb down. So I thought it was a hand up. Okay, never mind.
So there's not a single doctor on this panel that we can see
I don't see any hands up
of 150 that believes we should go ahead with the COVID-19 vaccine in the next 12 months. Is that what you're saying?
There's 160 doctors. I don't see anybody's hands up. So everybody agrees that there should be there's no justification for having a vaccine for COVID-19 in the next year. That's what we said, next 12 months, right?
Yes.
So none of the 160 doctors right now feel that there's any justification for COVID-19. And raise your hand if I said this wrong, if you agree with this. There's no justification to have a vaccine that's rolled out. Typically, it takes 5 to 8 years. They're trying to roll something out in the next year to treat something that we'll talk about that is not justified. That is not justified to create a pandemic. That doesn't even justify a pandemic. But how many people agree that there's absolutely no justification for use of a vaccine for this issue? How many people agree there's no justification?
Raise your hand. There's no justification for the use of a vaccine for this issue, is what you're saying. All right, if you could just keep those hands up, please. We just want to scroll through. Okay, I'm just counting those. I think it's pretty much everyone. Just keep those hands up. We just want to scroll through here. I'll be honest, Dr. Buttar, I'm shocked. I did not expect so many doctors to be completely against rolling out a COVID-19 vaccine in the next 12 months. I thought it might be 50-50.
Just to respond, thank you guys.
Thank you.
To make one point clear, we have over 7,400 doctors that have reached out over the last month. So we weren't able to get everybody on here, and people are busy and scheduled. So I believe that there's thousands and thousands of doctors worldwide that feel this way. They're just not being represented because the media is definitely trying to prevent this information from getting out. So Dr. Matt Grant, right below you right now on my screen, is nodding his head. I see Dr. Toscan, that she's nodding her head. Dr. Madavi is nodding her head. Dr. Prebeg is nodding his head. Dr. Trump, everybody, Dr. Mark Bison is, and these are only the people that I can see. Dr. Morales is, I'm seeing a lot of doctors nodding their heads. So people get this, they're understanding this. Dr. Jackson, Gloria Jackson is nodding her head. So there's a lot of people that feel this and understand this. So it's one of those incredible moments when we start realizing that we are the vast majority, but because we're being singled out, because we're not getting a voice or a fair voice, it is being prevented. The information is being prevented from being disseminated to the world so that the question can be asked, why is this happening? And that's really where the question should start, is why. So I'm sorry, Brian, I'm going to stop talking.
No, I think you bring up a great point, and that's this point of censorship, because if I go out into the mainstream media or even technology platforms right now, I won't see what we just saw. I won't see hundreds of doctors saying that the vaccination agenda in the next 12 months is a bad idea. And I'm just curious if maybe you can talk, and maybe we can even ask the panel to get their thoughts on the censorship that's happening. Maybe you can tell me why you think it's happening and why it's almost complete across the board. When I started even mentioning the word vaccination, I got shut down more than when I started questioning the classification of COVID-19 deaths, than when I started talking about potential technology like 5G exacerbating the immune system. It's the vaccination that was completely shut down. So maybe you can speak on censorship, and maybe the doctors can give us their thoughts.
I think that censorship is always something that an authoritarian dictatorship type government would want when they want to prevent the dissemination of information. So rather than even trying to give a reason for the censorship, let's ask the millions of people out there that may be seeing this, why would anybody censor facts and truth about injury that's been caused by something that has been promoted for the last 20 or 30 years as the single most important safety component for our children, yet has caused more injuries, more documented injuries, millions of children being maimed worldwide. Why would you want to stop the conversation? That's the first question. And I'll give you a couple of reasons, but I think that's the first question that we have to ask. So I didn't realize this, and I think I know quite a bit about vaccinations, but I didn't realize this till I saw a presentation from my friend, Bobby Kennedy, who you had on recently, and actually Dell and a couple of other people have also talked about this, that in the 1980s, the vaccine industry came to Congress and said, we need help. We need to be bailed out, just like the real estate, the savings and loan crisis and the automotive crisis. The vaccine industry came in the 1980s and asked for a bailout. And the reason they needed a bailout was because of the number of people that were being injured by vaccines. And President Reagan at the time said this is not a good idea, but Congress went ahead and bailed them out. And the reason that they gave was, we have so many lawsuits, we cannot make vaccines. We cannot afford to be in business. So the government bailed them out, and the government then took over the oversight with a mandate that every 2 years they would do safety studies on different vaccines. Up to this point, 2020, now we're talking about 40, 50 years later, because this was like in the 70s and the 80s, let's just say in the last 40 years. Guess how many safety studies have been done by the US government to assess the efficacy and safety of vaccines? I'll save you some time. 0. So the mandate that the government took over to do oversight has been totally ignored. Now, and it's not that they did it on purpose. I think they just, like the government, they dropped the ball. Now, how would you like to have a business where you can have no liability, and it doesn't matter how many people that you hurt, but there's no liability? Because now, let's say that I filed a lawsuit against a vaccine manufacturer. Guess who the defendant is on that lawsuit when it's filed with the government? The defendant is not that vaccine manufacturer. It's the HHS. It's the Health and Human Services. It's the US government that you're suing because of a vaccine injury. And guess who's defending the US government? The Department of Justice. So when you have a child that's been injured, you're fighting the Department of Justice, you're fighting the US government. And remember, the Department of Justice is supposed to be making sure that justice is being done. Instead, they are fighting to defend the Health and Human Services from somebody who's been injured. Now, does that make any sense whatsoever? That we are having to fight our own government because we've been injured by something that they've mandated that's being made by a company or companies that are vested in making unbelievable, god-awful amounts of money with no liability. So they can make garbage. They can inject horse manure into us, and they have no liability.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and
that's the question.
So again, and then my question is I'd love to get the panel's thoughts about this censorship, because they get to see every day what's being put out in the media, and they get to see what's not being put out. So I guess my question is that, do you think there is blatant censorship of real medical information that seems to be favoring a pro-vaccine agenda? That was my question. Is that a pretty good question?
I think it's a great question.
Okay, so raise your hand if you see blatant censorship that seems to serve a pro-vaccination agenda. If we just hold the hands up there. I'm just curious what this panel thinks. Okay, wow, all right. Okay, a lot of hands and thumbs up. Okay. What do you see here, Buttar? Dr. Buttar.
I see two people on the first page that don't have their hands up, but one of them is talking to somebody. So, okay. Dr. Tucker, can you vote? Okay, Dr. Tucker says only one hand that's not up.
Okay.
On the first page.
So it's 1 in 10 or 20 that don't have their hands up, and everyone else does. So it's kind of 95% people believe there is the blatant censorship towards a pro-vaccination agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that is super helpful. Okay, where do we go next? Is it worth talking about, the classification of the COVID-19 deaths? Is it worth talking about the accuracy of the test itself and some of the things that we've been talking about that's been going on in these hospitals? Is that worth talking about, and then maybe getting the doctors' panel's opinion on?
I think so. I think we definitely should talk about that. Yep.
Okay.
because it's an important issue. So let's talk about the testing and let's talk about the reporting.
Okay, so let's first talk about the test. As far as the COVID-19 test, I've had a lot of doctors on recently, especially, Dr. Andrew Kaufman really went into detail by saying that, it tests for a tiny piece of RNA that could be in the system for a lot of different reasons, and therefore it can give a lot of false positives, and therefore he doesn't find that test to be very accurate. That's one thing to discuss. The second thing to discuss is that people are being diagnosed with COVID-19 because of COVID-19 symptoms. And oftentimes also the autopsy is giving that as a reason for death when we know of the comorbidities and other issues. So maybe we start with the first one, with the actual test itself, because I'm curious what you think and what the panel thinks.
Well, the studies have shown clearly, they go back a number of years, 2018, a CAT study that showed positive for COVID-19 for coronavirus, even though there was no exposure to coronavirus. Why? Because of the vaccine schedules. If they'd had a trivalent or covalent flu shot, they were cats that had this flu shot were testing positive. But my question is, we know there's a lot of things in these vaccines that have been injected into our bodies that we weren't aware of, like the glyphosates, for example. So is it possible that we had other aspects injected into our bodies without us knowing about it? And when you go all the way back to even 1984, the people with the studies that were done in mice and various studies that have been done that have been attributed to this false positive, like a 37% false positive for the COVID-19. It actually isn't a false positive. I believe that it is testing and it is picking up something that has previously been injected in our bodies. But the bottom line is, as Dr. Kaufman had said, we're testing for a very small particle of DNA, RNA. And if you amplify this enough, you'll have 100% of the population that'll test positive. You know what I'm saying? So it's the instance. If you said that 1 out of every 100,000 cells is abnormal, but then you said, let me just change that criteria. If you have 1 out of 100,000 cells that are abnormal, then you're going to have disease X. But then we change the criteria and we say, well, let's go to 1 out of every million. Well, now you're going to have a decrease in the incidence of that disease because you're going to have diluted it. But if you amplify it and say, well, let's just say instead of 1 out of every 100,000, let's say 1 out of every 10,000, because you've just amplified it more. Or 1 out of every 1,000 or 1 out of every 100, then of course it's going to seem like the disease is very prevalent, but that's because you've changed the amplification of the analysis. And so if this is a certain component of the RNA or DNA, remember we're made up of various cells. If we start saying how many cells in our body are, or how much tissue in our body is, I'm trying to come up with a good example. If we're testing for the amount of cells in our body that are consistent with our nails, you're going to have a relatively small ratio. But if you start saying, okay, let's look at the cells that are consistent with skin, very, very specific for skin, you're going to have a much greater component that you're going to show positive for. And if you just start going for, let's look for every cell that has a nucleus and a cell membrane, then you're going to have 100%. So it all depends what you're looking at. And so the RNA fragments that they're looking at, they're going smaller and smaller and smaller. And when you amplify it, it's just going to start showing a higher and higher incidence. So that's what the bottom line comes down to. Okay,
so I think the question to the panel is, do they believe that the COVID-19 test, what inaccurately represents people that are actually, that actually have the coronavirus? What's the best way to phrase that question, Doctor?
Well, I think that probably we should say, how many people believe that the coronavirus has spread throughout the world, and probably everybody's going to test positive for it based upon how virulent and how fast it spread. My belief is it's already the whole planet already has it. So pretty much everybody's going to test positive. And when they say it's false positive, it's not false positive. It's just a positive. But it doesn't mean that we're sick. I mean, if you test for coronavirus, is everywhere and has been. It's been over the whole planet since the 1960s. So it's not checking for enough specificity of pathology. It's just checking for a general component. But even like people that have never been exposed and animal models that have never been exposed are testing positive, which tells me that everybody that has ever had any type of a flu shot probably is already going to test positive.
Okay,
so I'm not sure how to phrase
what
that.
If that question was this: how many people believe that if you test positive for COVID-19, that does not mean that you have a virus? Is that the question? Or is that, because the point is that a lot of people have said that you're going to test positive because you might have some of this RNA floating around your body, which you're saying we all could have for a variety of reasons. So how many believe a positive test on COVID-19 does not necessarily, mean?
Well, Brian, before we ask that question, let's ask a different question.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website, londonreal.tv, or click the link in the description below.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real. And he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, do you want to profit from crypto? Then join my DeFi Academy. The Crypto DeFi Academy will help you create generational wealth. But don't take my word for it. Listen to my students.
When I first got into crypto, I remember thinking to myself, I need to learn more. Brian Rose, learning crypto, learning DeFi, gotta do it.
I am so grateful that I jumped in and did this. I had to break through some limiting beliefs that I can do this, that I can afford this, that I can be in this.
It challenges the things that are deeply rooted within us.
Joining DeFi Academy has been one of the best decisions I have made on my blockchain journey.
This course was a life changer, a game changer, a huge eye-opener, coming from knowing practically nothing at the speed of the learning over 4 weeks. Was just fantastic.
The information you provided in this class was invaluable.
I feel far more confident in my next steps.
You took complex concepts and made them easier to understand.
What's different than so many other ones is it just doesn't tell you what to do. It actually makes you do it.
This is for people who are serious about becoming traders. This is the way it should be done.
I realized from this learning experience again that it is not about what you learn, but about who you learn it from.
The energy was insane. I've never experienced such incredible energy on a live call. Brian Rose, you are a legend, my friend.
It's the only thing in the market where you can get all information and learn everything what you need to know.
Everything is so clear and so well done, and I am just forever grateful for this program.
It made me feel so much more confident about crypto than I did before.
I did not anticipate how passionate I was going to become about it.
It's also been like a big learning experience for me, not just in the crypto space, but just an overall balance of life.
What I've learned is, how to take ownership, of my life in a way that I really hadn't before.
Yeah, you can't put a price on that, really.
I would recommend it to anybody, top notch.
Excellence does not come cheap. So if you want excellence, you got to pay for it, but it's so worth it.
Pull the trigger. That's what this course is about.
You're not going to regret it, really. It's amazing.
Thank you, Brian and team.
So what are you waiting for? Crypto is happening now. Click the link below, submit your application, and let me mentor you on how to create generational wealth and build the decentralized financial infrastructure of the future.